I was really struck looking through these sources how they all point towards something similar.
Yeah.
Ways to cut down daily anxiety and, well, have more impact. So today we're diving deep into this collection of wisdom, philosophy, literature, self-mastery stuff. And we're framing it all with this metaphor, the river of authentic living. We're basically trying to figure out how to stop fighting the current,
Yeah.
and learn to just flow.
Exactly. That's the mission, really. Synthesis. We've got insights from the Bhagavad Gita, Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Kant, even modern figures like Pressfield and T.E. Lawrence. And it's not just about summarizing. We want to understand the core thread, the shared idea, how these small, consistent, authentic choices that daily flow create a life with real power and purpose.
Yeah, and for you listening, the big question we're exploring here is pretty practical. How do we actually shift? Shift from constantly striving, feeling anxious about some future goal, to just trusting the process, living in that state of like natural, powerful flow right now. So let's trace this river back to its source. Okay, let's jump right in with this quote that feels backwards at first. Practice begins when you get it right. From Kimberly Myers Sims, a musician. Usually we think practice is the struggle towards getting it right, the awkward bit. But she's saying true practice, the kind that builds real mastery, that only starts after you get past the performance anxiety, when you start operating from, I guess, embodiment.
That's it. It's the difference between doing something so people think you're competent versus doing it because you are competent. It's internal. See, when we're looking for that external pat on the back, we're actually blocking the flow. We're thinking about the audience, not the action itself. The wisdom here is that, well, real competence is an internal thing. It's quiet. Like the sources say, confidence is silent, insecurity is loud. That flow state, it's quiet. Doesn't need to shout about itself.
Okay, I get the core idea, but let me push back a bit on that. Silent confidence. I mean, in today's world, if you're competent but you don't, put yourself out there, how do you get the opportunities to actually use that competence? Isn't some level of noise, maybe self-promotion, kind of necessary?
That's a really important distinction. We're not arguing against communicating your skills, not at all. It's about the kind of communication. Is it coming from insecurity, from anxiety? Silent confidence isn't about hiding. It's about making sure your actions and how you talk about them are rooted in genuine skill, not in a fear that you're not good enough. Rumi puts it so well. Raise your words, not your voice. It is the rain that grows flowers, not the thunder. Consistent quality work, the rain that naturally gets noticed over time. Loud scrambling, the thunder, often just, noise.
Right, the rain, not the thunder. Consistency, that makes sense.
Exactly. And that brings us to the link between the thinking and action, right there at the headwaters. A key idea that keeps coming up is poor play results from poor thinking. If the source, our thoughts, our ego, our internal state, if that's clouded by fear or needing validation, then what comes out, our actions, it's going to be off. It's corrupted. The flow starts clear when the thinking is clear.
Okay, so we've talked about the source, the thinking, the internal state. But where does the stream actually start moving? How do those clear thoughts turn into, action?
They flow into what these sources call the moral current. If we're looking for that authentic flow, we need to find the main current, the unifying power. And they identify that as universal moral law. Tolstoy said it plainly. All true wisdom and all true faith are clearly expressed in the same moral law. It suggests living authentically isn't about inventing your own rules constantly, but more about aligning with something fundamental, something bedrock.
And the continuity across time is just, wow. You have Marcus Aurelius suggesting all thinking beings share the same basic intellect. And then centuries later, Kant sees this link between the sky above me and the moral law within me. It's like the cosmos and conscience operate on similar principles.
And for Kant, that wasn't just a nice poetic thought. It was core to his philosophy, that moral law inside. It's the demand for rationality, the categorical imperative. It's this duty we have to act based on principles we could actually make universal. So virtue isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's an inherent demand for consistency.
Yeah.
And consistency is flow in this context.
Okay, but that raises a big question. If this law is universal, rooted in duty, how does that apply to my messy everyday life?
Right. The translation happens in the small things, the power of small decisions.
Right.
If the moral law is the current, then every single choice you make is like a drop of water helping steer that current. The sources keep hitting on two big ideas about responsibility here. First, what we permit, we are promoting. We set standards not just by what we do, but by what we allow, what we tolerate in our own lives, in our immediate world.
Wow, that's heavy. It really makes you think. Every time I just, let something slide that I don't agree with,
Yeah.
I'm kind of voting for it to continue. Puts a lot of weight on those small choices you make all day long.
It does. And that leads straight to the second principle. Every action we make is a vote for the type of person we wish to become. You aren't just born authentic, you're building that character, vote by vote, choice by choice. Every time you pick consistency over convenience, maybe truth over ego.
So this voting idea, what does it mean for how we treat people, our relationships? The Golden Rule, Matthew 7.1, seems to connect that internal moral law to how we act outwardly, right? What we do for others reflects back on how we feel about ourselves. It's like a cycle. Authenticity flows out through serving that duty, and it comes back as self-respect because you've honored it.
Precisely. And if that moral law is the current, then we hit this fascinating paradox when we look at the work itself. This comes straight from the Bhagavad Gita. You have the right to work, but for the work's sake only. You have no right to the fruits of work. Now, this might be the toughest piece of wisdom in our whole deep dive. It says authentic action has to flow purely from principle, detached from whether you get the outcome you want.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, because we can link that ancient idea of detachment to something very modern, very action-focused. T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, he talked about different kinds of dreamers. He contrasted the night dreamers, who were just lost in fantasy, maybe vanity, obsessed with the result, with the daydreamers.
Yes. And Lawrence called these daydreamers dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make them possible. It's such a perfect modern take on the Gita's principle, the night dreamer, attached to the fruit, the vision of success, fame, whatever. But the daydreamer, they are completely committed to the act itself, the daily work of making the dream happen, whether or not success is guaranteed at the end.
So Lawrence's daydreamer is basically living the Gita principle in practice. They're committed to the process, acting the dream, the outcome, almost irrelevant to their motivation, because the motivation comes from inside, from the principle, not the external reward. That must be why he calls them dangerous. You can't stop them with failure. Failure only hits the outcome, not the process they're locked into.
Exactly right. The flow state comes from trusting the process, trusting the cause and effect within the system, the result. It's just a natural consequence, a symptom of doing the work authentically. We see it simply. Health results from healthful living. Focus on the daily healthful living, the process, and health, the outcome, tends to follow. But if you only obsess about the perfect health number, that goal, you often end up skipping the hard daily steps needed to get there.
But, no river just flows smoothly forever. There are always rocks, obstacles, sharp turns. Stephen Pressfield's ideas about the villain really help here. He reframes resistance completely. Obstacles, the rocks in the river, they don't actually stop the flow. They shape it. They strengthen the current of our character.
Yes, resistance becomes instruction. The villain's job in a story is exactly like resistance in life. Pressfield points out the villain is there just to block the hero's intention, and that makes the story tauter, raises the stakes, deepens the jeopardy. The insight isn't about avoiding villains or resistance, it's realizing the villain holds the lesson you need to move forward.
And the sources break down the kinds of resistance, the types of villains we face. There's the obvious one, the external villain, a physical threat, a competitor. Then there's the societal villain, systemic issues like racism or homophobia mentioned in the examples, things that hold back whole groups.
Right. But often the toughest one is the internal villain, the one inside the hero's own head. Fear, anxiety, procrastination, self-doubt. What Pressfield famously calls resistance with a capital R. This internal villain is the one that most directly messes with the river's flow because it muddies the headwaters, that clear thinking we talked about.
So the takeaway isn't about trying to be perfect, which is easy to fall into when you're anxious.
Oh, definitely not. It's about embracing faith over fears, progress over perfection. Resistance is teaching you something. We have to accept that failure is success if we learn from it. The obstacles, they force the river to dig a deeper channel, make the flow stronger, keep it from getting stagnant.
Okay, so as the river keeps flowing, moving towards the sea, there seems to be this natural shift, a shift towards service. This connects to G.K. Chesterton's idea. There are no uninteresting things, only uninterested people. It feels like living authentically changes how you see things, makes the everyday meaningful. And that naturally points you outward towards a bigger purpose.
And what's really fascinating there is the link between surrender and expanded capacity. We cited that spiritual quote, "Be all and only for Jesus. Let him use me without consulting me first." Now, Putting that in secular terms, it's about surrendering the small ego, that demanding, controlling part of us, surrendering it to a larger shared purpose.
What does that actually mean, though, practically?
Right.
Surrendering the small ego. Is it just taking advice, or is it like abandoning all personal ambition?
Good question. No, it's not about ditching ambition. It's about aligning your ambition with principle, with that moral current. See, the small ego is always checking in with its fear and its vanity first. How does this make me look? Will this keep me safe? Surrendering that means you trust the current, the duty, the principle, and you stop constantly consulting your personal fears about the outcome. Your action flows from the principle itself, not from self-protection. That's a huge shift.
And somehow giving up that control, that surrender, it actually unlocks power. Ralph Waldo Emerson said something like, imagination is not the talent of some men, but the health of every man. It suggests these abilities, this capacity for flow, they aren't special gifts for a few. They're natural states that just emerge when we stop fighting the current of our own potential, because we've let go of fearing the outcome.
Exactly. And that clarifies the river's final direction service. The directive about power becomes crystal clear. Refuse to be a slave to power. Instead, use your power to help other people. Real power flows through us when we channel our abilities for others, for that larger purpose, instead of trying to hoard it for the small ego. That's why those daydreamers, committed to the act itself, are often the most effective people. They actually get things done.
And wrapping up the idea of persistence, we have James Oppenheim's wisdom. The foolish man seeks happiness in the distance. The wise grows it under his feet. Authentic living isn't some far-off destination you reach with one giant leap. It's about patient, consistent practice,
Yeah.
honoring the flow right here, right now. So that brings us to where all these streams of wisdom meet, the confluence. For you, listening, the key takeaway seems to be, stop fighting the river. Cultivate that clear thinking. Align your daily choices with the moral current, that sense of duty within. Practice working without being obsessed with the results. And welcome resistance, because it's always there. See it as a force that shapes you.
Yeah, the work never really stops, does it? The transformation happens in that daily flow. The person who aligns with this authentic living, they find they have more capacity, more influence, mostly because they've stopped wasting energy fighting the natural laws of their own being. What really stands out to me is the clarity that real success isn't about control. It's about channeling.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. The sources challenge us. Leave this place better than what you found it. If every single action you take is truly a vote for the kind of person you want to become, think about your next small, authentic vote. How does it contribute not just to your own personal flow, but to the health of the whole river? The current knows the way. Your only job, perhaps, is to flow with grace.